struggling single mom spent her last coins on bread. The CEO millionaire beside her suddenly said, "Get more? I'll pay for everything. Please, just a second. I think I have a few more coins," Kathy whispered, her voice trembling. The cashier shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, there's a line behind you." "I know. She trailed off, one arm tightening around her baby girl, the other frantically digging through the worn-out pockets of a fraying handbag. Her pale fingers, raw from the cold, fumbled with a handful of nickels and pennies, placing them one by one on the counter. The total still wasn't enough. Behind her, sighs of impatience rippled through the small neighborhood grocery store. Someone coughed pointedly. Another muttered, "Unbelievable." Kathy's cheeks flushed with heat, not from shame alone, but from the rising fever burning against her collarbone where little Ella lay nestled. The baby whimpered weakly, a dry cough rattling from her tiny chest. The loaf of bread and a single carton of milk sat on the counter between her and the cashier, the last meal she could offer. After tonight, the landlord would surely throw them out. No rent, no second chances. Kathy blinked rapidly, willing the tears not to fall. She could not break. Not here. Not now. She reached into the inner pocket of her coat. Nothing. Just. Then, a shadow stepped forward from behind her. A deep, calm voice broke the tension at more. "I'll pay for everything." Everyone froze. The cashier looked up, startled. The people in line stopped shifting. Even Kathy, mid-minor, went completely still. She turned her head slightly. A tall man stood behind her, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark charcoal coat, a gray knit beanie pulled low over his forehead. His face was unreadable, yet his tone had left no room for argument. His eyes, cool and clear, had locked onto the baby in Kathy's arms. Kathy began, unsure whether to refuse, run, or collapse. He stepped closer, calm and quiet, and gently pushed a shopping basket forward. Without saying another word, he added items into her purchase: more bread, baby formula, a pack of diapers, children's fever medicine. The cashier hesitated, eyes darting between them. Still, no one else moved or spoke. Then came the smallest, most unexpected gesture. The man picked up the small bottle of children's fever reducer already in Kathy's hands. He turned it slightly, reading the label, then glanced at Ella. "Bishan needs this. Don't wait too long." His voice was soft now, almost kind but firm. There was no condescension, no performance, just quiet urgency. Kathy stared at him, unsure whether to feel grateful or defensive, but Ella let out a cough that reminded her she did not have the luxury of pride. With one arm, she held her daughter tighter, and with the other, she pulled the added items into her embrace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice catching. He didn't respond. Instead, he handed the cashier a credit card. The total was paid without question. Kathy stood there, numb, holding bags she never expected to carry. Her baby and her dignity, fragile, but intact. She turned to the man again, searching his face for something. An explanation. Perhaps, but he had already stepped aside, silent. "Wait, what's your name?" she asked. He paused. "Andrew," he said simply before pulling a small card from his coat and offering it to her. "If she needs a doctor, call this number. No thanks needed." And just like that, he walked out. The store slowly resumed its rhythm. Customers resumed their murmuring. The cashier exhaled and called the next person in line. But Kathy just stood there for a moment longer, holding Ella close. She looked down at the card in her hand. No company, name, no title, just a name and a number. Andrew G. Outside, the wind howled through the streets, cold and biting. But in her arms, Ella shifted, breathing a little easier. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance to make it through the night. If you feel even a flicker of hope in this moment, tap the hype button. Sometimes a single act of kindness changes everything. This is the sort of honesty that advertisers. The apartment smelled of damp wood and old insulation. Kathy pushed the door open with her shoulder, juggling the grocery bag and her feverish daughter, Ella, whose head rested limply against her shoulder. Inside, the small space was cold, barely warmer than the street outside. A single space heater buzzed in the corner, struggling against the chill seeping in through the cracked window panes. The entire unit was barely 20 square m. A stained mattress lay in the corner. The ceiling had a spreading water stain just above where Kathy slept. Mold crept along the baseboards. The air was stale, heavy. She set Ella gently down on the thin mattress, her movements tender. The baby whimpered weakly. Kathy dampened a small towel in cold water and began wiping her daughter's burning forehead. Her eyes, dull from fatigue, flicked to the corner where the last of the diapers sat. Just two left. She barely had the strength to stand, but her body moved on instinct. She adjusted the blanket around Ella's tiny form, tucking it close under her chin. Then came the knock. It was not polite. It was not patient. It was the kind of knock that came with anger behind it. Kathy tensed. Another knock, louder. She dragged herself to the door and opened it slowly. The landlady stood there, arms crossed, face cold as stone. "I'm giving you 2 days," the woman snapped without preamble. 2. After that, I don't care if you and that kid are out on the street. This isn't a charity. Please, Kathy said softly, eyes pleading. "I'm trying to get the money. Just a few more days." The woman's gaze shifted to Ella behind Kathy, curled in a ball under a tattered blanket, her tiny chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. She sneered. "Girls like you should have thought twice before spreading your legs. Now look at you, dragging a sick baby around. Can't even pay rent." The words sliced through Kathy's chest, but she said nothing. She just bowed her head. The door slammed shut with a sharp finality. Kathy stood still for a long moment before her knees gave out, and she sank to the floor. Her arms wrapped around her own ribs like she could keep herself from falling apart. From the room next door, muffled voices floated through the thin walls. "Did you hear that? She's still behind on rent. Had a baby at what, 20? Probably. Doesn't even know who the father is. He should go ask the state for help instead of begging the landlord. She looks like she hasn't slept in weeks. Poor baby, though, born into all that." Kathy squeezed her eyes shut. Her hands reached out blindly until they found the brown paper bag she had carried home. She pulled the loaf of bread and carton of milk into her lap like they were treasures. The weight of them, the simple fact they existed in her hands, brought tears to her eyes. Her voice cracked as she whispered to the sleeping baby, "I'm sorry, Ella. Mommy couldn't even buy this for you." A stranger had to step in. She ran a hand gently across her daughter's damp hair. A single tear slipped down her cheek. No one saw it. Only the dim, flickering light bulb overhead bore witness to the silent collapse of a young mother holding on by threads. She set the milk aside and pulled out her wallet. $1.25. That was all. She looked at it for a long moment. Then from her coat pocket, she retrieved the small card he had handed her. Andrew G. A phone number, no company, no email, no address, nothing else. She hesitated. Pride fought logic. But Ella coughed again, this time deeper, rarer. Kathy closed her eyes, took a breath, and dialed. The line clicked once, then his voice. "I told you. No thanks are necessary. I'll send a doctor right away." She was caught off guard. By how calm he sounded, by how certain he was. Her voice faltered. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. There was a brief silence. Then he said simply, no one's asking. You two, he added gently this time. Just take care of your little girl. Kathy's hand trembled as she lowered the phone. She looked down at Ella, now dozing again, and for the first time in weeks. She let herself breathe. The knock on the door was soft but steady. Kathy opened it cautiously. A man in his 30s stood there, medical bag in hand, calm and kind. I'm Dr. Harris, he said. Here for Ella? She nodded, stepping aside as he entered the small room. He didn't ask about insurance or payment. He simply knelt beside the mattress, checked Ella's temperature, listened to her lungs, and took quiet notes. Ella whimpered, her breath rattling, but followed him with glassy eyes. Kathy stood nearby, silent, overwhelmed. When the exam was done, he handed her a short list. These are the meds she needs. Someone will drop them off later. Keep her warm. Small sips. Plenty of rest. He packed his bag. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, You've got a good friend. Kathy frowned. I don't even know who sent you. He just smiled and left. An hour later, another knock. No words. Just a paper bag left at the door. Inside, medicine, wipes, a bottle of infant Tylenol, and a small folded note. 3 times a day with water. Rest. Matters, too. No name, just the same handwriting. Kathy stared at it, then at the card still lying on the table. Andrew G. No company, no address, just a number. She hesitated, then called. Andrew, the voice answered calmly. It's me. I wanted to say thank you. You don't have to. But I do. You don't. He repeated gently. I only did what anyone should do. She swallowed. Still, no one else did. If your daughter needs anything else, he said, call. That number's always on. Then the line went silent. Kathy held the phone, stunned. No requests, no lectures, just presents. She sat beside Ella's bed. The baby was breathing easier now, color slowly returning to her cheeks. Kathy pulled the blanket higher, brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, and stared at the small card and the brown paper bag beside it. She hadn't felt this in a long time. Not quite peace. Not yet comfort. But something close. Hope. A few days later, while packing to prepare for another possible eviction, Kathy found a crumpled flyer buried in old papers. She had picked it up weeks ago outside a community center and forgotten all about it. Rachel went to the center and forgotten all about it. She smoothed it out and read Art for Hope, a creative project for single mothers. Now hiring illustrators for children's books. Honorarium provided. No formal credentials required. Apply within. Her breath caught. Once long ago she had dreamed of being an illustrator. Before everything fell apart. Before Ella, before survival became the only art she knew. She turned the flyer over. No company name, just a submission email. And a single line. We believe in second chances. The words made her think of Andrew. It was probably coincidence. But something in her chest stirred. That night, she pulled out an old sketch pad from under the bed and began drawing. Her fingers were stiff, rusty, but the images came. A mother bear wrapping her cub in a warm embrace. A child reaching up toward a star. 2 hands soaked by rain, clinging to each other. By morning, her hands were covered in grapha, and her soul felt lighter. She submitted her portfolio with trembling fingers. 1 week later, an email arrived. Subject: application art for Hope or Body. Dear Kathy, thank you for your submission. We would be honored to interview you. A member of our team will contact you shortly. There was no mention of Andrew. No clear sign he was behind any of it. But she knew the tone, the timing, the gentle space that let her breathe. It was him. It had to be. Kathy sat at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, Ella sleeping soundly beside her. She was scared. She was unsure. But, for the first time in a very long time, she said yes. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee. It was a modest space in a local community center. But to Kathy it felt like a sanctuary. She stood before a blank canvas. Charcoal and pastels smudged across her fingertips. Light poured in from the tall windows, casting warm lines across the wooden floor. In the corner, Ella sat on a mat, cheeks rosy, flipping through a soft cloth book. Weeks had passed since she was accepted into the Art for Hope program. Yet Kathy still woke up each day with disbelief. Someone had seen her. Someone had handed her a brush and said, "Paint what matters to you." And so she did. She painted what it felt like to hold a feverish child alone at midnight. The small hand clutching hers, knuckles pale from strain. The flicker of hope in the darkest corners of a cold room. Always she painted light creeping in from the edge, the window, or from within. The coordinators were kind and never intrusive. They paid her for each piece. Let her work from home when Ella wasn't well. They never asked about her past. What Kathy didn't know was that Andrew saw everything, though he kept his distance. Every sketch she uploaded, every scanned page, every caption, he quietly followed it all through a shared folder. At first, he told himself it was just oversight, routine. But her art broke through him. In her drawings, he saw echoes of his own childhood, a boy, alone outside a glowing window, a child hunched on a bench wrapped in clothes too large, a hand reaching for bread, not because he wanted it, but because he needed it. But Kathy didn't just capture suffering. She redeemed it. She gave it dignity. She gave it hope. When the center announced a fundraising exhibit, Kathy was invited to contribute 3 original pieces. She nearly declined. "I'm not good enough," she whispered one night, watching Ella sleep peacefully. But then she remembered the first time she'd picked up a pencil again. The way her hands shook, the way the paper had welcomed her without question. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing Ella what survival could become. The exhibit opened on a Saturday evening. The space was filled with soft music, flickering candles, and quiet conversations. Kathy stood in the back, heart pounding. Then she saw them, her paintings centered on the main wall. Piece 1, a woman sheltering a child beneath a leaking roof, her face tired but full of tenderness. Piece 2, 2 hands, one small, one large, wrapped in a scarf, under candlelight. Piece 3, a loaf of bread on a worn table, a child's hand, reaching another hand offering. Visitors moved slowly, some with tears in their eyes. "She must have lived this," someone whispered. "It feels real," another murmured. Toward the end of the evening, a coordinator approached. "There's someone here who wanted to meet you." Kathy turned expectant, but no one stood there. Only a small envelope resting on the table nearby. She picked it up with trembling hands. Inside, a folded note. "You gave pain a voice, and then you gave it wings." A.M. Her breath caught. She gripped the table, knees weak. And for the first time in what felt like years, the tears came. Not from fear or shame, but from something deeper, something healing. She pressed the note to her chest and closed her eyes. She had survived, but now she was learning how to live. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Ella was napping peacefully, her tiny arms stretched above her head like wings. The apartment, still modest, still small, felt lighter now, brighter. A place that echoed less with fear and more with possibility. Kathy sat at the kitchen table, flipping through a discarded copy of the local paper someone had left on a bench outside the art center. She was sipping instant coffee, still getting used to mornings that didn't begin in panic. She turned the page and stopped. There in full color was his face. From Wall Street Wolf to Angel of the Arts. Andrew Grayson, CEO of Grayson Capital, funds hope through brushstrokes. Once known for ruthless takeovers and profit-first decisions, Andrew Grayson surprises critics by founding Art for Hope, a community outreach program aimed at supporting struggling single mothers through art and storytelling. Her heart dropped. Andrew Grayson, CEO, Capital, Wealth, Power. The man who had stood silently behind her in the grocery store. The one who told her to take more. The one who sent the doctor. The one who had watched her art unfold from a distance. She felt her breath catch in her throat. The article went on to dissect his past, his cutthroat business reputation, his lack of public empathy, his refusal to engage in charity efforts in earlier years. It questioned the sudden shift. Is this true redemption or strategic rebranding? One columnist asked. Grayson's involvement in Art for Hope has been unusually hands-off. His name appears nowhere on the program's materials. Admirable or suspicious? Kathy's hands trembled slightly. She stared at his face on the page. So familiar now, yet suddenly distant, different. He had never told her who he really was. Never once mentioned his wealth, his power, his status. And somehow that silence felt like a betrayal. The pieces started clicking into place. The anonymous generosity, the quiet support, the envelope at the gallery, the steady presence, always just out of reach. He had been there from the beginning, and he had never said a word. Why? She told herself it was kindness. Then she told herself it was control. She could not tell the difference anymore. That afternoon, she dressed. Ella wrapped her in her little yellow jacket and walked the long blocks across town to the Art for Hope office. Her steps were heavy, her throat tight. She asked for Andrew at the front desk. The receptionist gave a nod and pointed her upstairs. He was alone in a corner. Office, sleek, modern, walls of glass and clean lines, a world far from the leaking ceiling and second-hand mattress she came from. He looked up when she entered, surprised. Kathy, he said quietly. You found out. She held up the newspaper without a word and placed it on the desk between them. He didn't flinch. I was going to tell you, he said slowly. Just not yet. Why not? Because the moment you knew who I was, everything would change. He looked away, voice calm, but distant. I didn't want your gratitude or your fear or your resentment. I just wanted you to have a fair chance. You think I couldn't have handled the truth? She asked, her voice cracking. You didn't give me the dignity of knowing who was pulling the strings behind my life. I wasn't pulling strings. No, she shot back. You were everywhere. The doctor, the job, the exhibition. You watched everything. You gave me this chance. And I thought, I earned it. I thought someone saw me for who I was, not for what I lacked. He stood slowly, hands on the edge of the desk. You did earn it, he said, his voice low. You still do. I'm your therapist. But you pied me. No, he said, firmly. You felt sorry for me, like I was some charity project. Andrew's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something deeper. Wounded pride maybe, or regret. Then after a pause, he said one sentence. If you really think I helped you because I pity you, then you never understood me at all. Silence fell like a curtain. Kathy stared at him, chest rising and falling. She didn't know what she had expected. An apology, maybe an explanation that made it all make sense. But all she had was that one sentence. And the truth behind it made her ache more than any lie ever could. She turned without another word and walked out. This time, he didn't stop her. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Inside the gallery's back office, everything was still, except for the ticking clock and Andrew's shallow breath as he stared into the gray sky. He had not expected her to come, but there she was. Kathy stood in the doorway, unreadable. The fury had faded. The newspaper was left behind. What she carried now wasn't anger. It was something heavier. "I don't understand you," she said quietly. "And I hate that. I want to." Andrew turned slowly. He looked tired. Older. He pulled out a chair and gestured. "Sit." Kathy hesitated, then crossed the room. "I was 7 when I stole my first thing," Andrew said. "A loaf of bread. 5th and Main." She blinked, caught off guard. "2 older boys saw me. Beat me so bad I couldn't stand for 2 days." His voice was flat, distant. "I lived at St. Augustine's, government run, always cold, always loud. Hunger was normal." He finally looked at her. "I didn't steal because I was bad. I stole because I was starving. The cook was drunk again. And I was afraid I'd die if I went to bed empty one more night." Kathy stayed silent. "I sat behind that store for hours, bruised, bleeding, waiting to be hit again." A bitter smile crossed his face. But instead, a woman came. He paused, jaw tightening. She had a coat too big for her, scarf on her head, maybe 35. She didn't ask anything, just handed me a warm paper bag. His breath shook. I couldn't say thank you. I just cried. Kathy's throat tightened. He knelt beside me and said, "If you're still alive tomorrow, do the same for someone else." Silence stretched. Andrew turned, his face wiping the corner of his eye quickly. "I never saw her again," he said. "Don't even know her name." "But you remembered her," Kathy whispered. I remembered everything. His eyes found hers again. The smell of the bread, her voice. It was the only kindness I got back then that didn't cost me something. Kathy folded her arms, not in defense, but like holding herself together. "She changed you," she said. "She saved me," Andrew replied. "Not just with food, but with the idea that someone like me, unwanted, filthy, invisible, was worth saving." He looked at her, voice low. "So, no, Kathy, I didn't help you out of pity. I helped you because I saw you." Pause. "And because if that woman were still alive, I think she'd want me to keep my promise." Kathy said nothing. She had come here with doubt, ready to challenge him. But now she stood before a man made powerful, not by money, but by memory. A memory of a nameless woman and a loaf of bread. Andrew looked down at the table, voice nearly breaking. "I've carried that moment with me for 30 years. Every decision, every deal. I've tried to earn that bread, to be worthy of it." Only the sound of rain filled the silence. Then Kathy reached across the table slowly. Her hand rested gently over his. Andrew looked up. "You were," she said, voice soft, cracking. "You are." And for the first time since she had met him, Andrew Grayson let the tears fall. The letter lay on Andrew's desk like a wound. No envelope, just a single sheet. Folded once. Her name, Kathy, in the corner. He unfolded it slowly. The ink was smudged. Tears maybe, or haste. "Andrew, you gave me more than I ever deserved. You believed in me when I could not believe in myself. You gave Ella medicine, safety. You gave me a voice again. But I have not been honest. Not with you. Not with myself. Every time I looked at you, I saw a world I do not belong to. You rebuilt me. But I still feel like a guest in a home I did not earn. So I am leaving. Not because I want to, but because I am afraid. Afraid that if I stay, I will keep hoping I am enough. Please do not look for me. Just know that I am grateful. Kathy." Andrew stared at the last line. Then he moved. He left his office. No coat. No phone. just the letter in hand and her name echoing through him. He drove first to the apartment. Empty. Then to the community center. No sign. The daycare, the pharmacy on 12th, the bench where she once drew. Nothing. The snow had started to fall, soft, steady, quieting the city. Then, as he passed the old Greyhound station, he saw her. Kathy sitting beneath a flickering street lamp, wrapped in a thin coat, Ella bundled in her arms, a small suitcase at her feet, snow gathering on her boots. She looked up, startled, then tired. "I asked you not to come," she said. Andrew said nothing. He walked to her and knelt down right there in the snow. From his coat, he pulled a small velvet box. Kathy stiffened while he opened it. A ring not flashy, no? Diamonds, just a smooth silver band with a quiet engraving. "Begin again." Her eyes widened. He nodded. "I found the bracelet in your suitcase," he said softly, "broken under Ella's clothes. You said it was your mother's. I didn't know I still had it. I had it remade. I thought maybe you deserved something from the past strong enough to carry into the future." She stared at him, lips parted. Andrew's voice dropped, nearly lost in the wind. "This isn't charity or guilt or gratitude. This is me finally standing still and realizing I don't want to go forward without you." Kathy held Ella tighter, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't belong in your world." He shook his head slowly. "You don't belong behind me or beneath me. You belong with me." His breath fogged the space between them. "I've spent my whole life running from where I came from," he said. "But you made me stop. You made me turn around. You let me remember that boy. And you helped me forgive him." He reached for her hand. This time his voice cracked. "I'm not rescuing you. This time you're saving me." Snow fell around them. Kathy looked at the ring. Then Adela, rosy shaked, drowsy. Then back to the man kneeling in the cold. Not trembling from the weather, but from everything he had never said until now. And she reached out, not for the ring, but for his hand. Their fingers met. Bare, cold, skin to skin, and the world still. She did not say yes. She did not have to, because sometimes reaching back says more than words ever could. And in the falling snow, with a child between them and a broken past behind them, Kathy and Andrew began again. 1 year later, the building stood on the corner of 14th and Mason. It wasn't grand, nothing like the glass towers Andrew used to spend his days in, but it was warm, the kind of place that smelled like crayons, fresh coffee, and new beginnings. Above the entrance, a wooden sign hung gently in the breeze. Bread and hope, a center for creative mothers and their children. Inside, sunlight spilled through wide windows, dancing across paint-stained tables and colorful walls covered in framed artwork. Children's laughter echoed from a nearby classroom. Somewhere down the hallway, someone was playing an out-of-tune piano, and no one minded. At the heart of it all stood Kathy. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, charcoal smudged across her fingertips. A child, tugging at her apron, asking for help with a color wheel. She knelt down, smiling. "Try mixing a little yellow into the red. See what happens." The little girl beamed, nodding eagerly. Across the room, Ella, now a healthy, bubbly 2-year-old, was sitting at a miniature easel, holding a fat paintbrush in one hand and humming to herself. Her canvas was a mess of bright colors, sunflowers, stars, and what appeared to be a flying sandwich. "She calls it magic bread," Kathy said later with a laugh, watching her daughter from the doorway. "I think she remembers more than she lets on." Behind her, Andrew leaned in the doorway of her office, sleeves rolled up, watching the two of them like he still couldn't believe they were real. "You gave her a world she can paint in," he said. "That's more than magic." Kathy turned toward him, smiling softly. And you gave me the canvas. He shook his head. No, you already had it. I just helped you find the light. The center had started with just 5 mothers and their children. Women who, like Kathy once had been overlooked, underestimated, left behind. Now bread and hope served dozens, art classes, counseling, warm meals, free childcare. No one was turned away. Kathy, now its creative director, spent her days teaching others to tell their stories through brush and ink. Her own art had been published in 2 children's books, but it was here, among the noise, the mess, the healing, that she found her true voice. Andrew didn't attend board meetings anymore. He sat on the floor during story hour, helped serve soup on Tuesdays, and walked kids home when it rained. Once a week, he still met with a financial advisor. But every other moment belonged to this place and to the 2 girls who taught him how to stay. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the mural-lined walls, Kathy stepped into the studio and looked around. She saw a mother helping her daughter trace shapes, a young woman laughing at a paint spill on her shirt, Ella holding her newest painting up for approval. This one a son made of bread slices. Kathy smiled. This wasn't the life she thought she'd have. It was better. Not because it was perfect, but because it was hers. Andrew walked over, took her hand, and together they stood there watching a world that had been built from hunger, from fear, from fragments of the past, and from hope. One loaf of bread, one sentence, one heart that refused to give up, and a love that began in the most unexpected place, right beside a grocery store checkout line. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, if it reminded you that kindness still exists, and that sometimes a single moment can change an entire life, then don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where we bring you real, emotional, and unforgettable tales that heal the soul. And if you believe in second chances, in love found in unlikely places, and in the power of hope, hit that hype button to show your support. Your one click helps us keep sharing stories that matter. Until next time, stay kind, stay human, and remember, sometimes all it takes is a loaf of bread.